I sometimes wonder if there's a secret contest for the wildest HOA showdown in America. If there is, I might have just walked away with the gold medal and a felony conviction for the president as a bonus. Seriously, tell me if you've ever heard of anything crazier than what I'm about to lay out, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments wherever you're watching from. I want to hear it. But let's get right into it because this isn't one of those stories that needs a slow wind-up. This is about the time my neighborhood HOA president, let's just call her Linda Whitmore though, behind her back everyone called her Karen, for reasons that'll become obvious, tried to turn a simple power trip into a full-blown disaster movie, complete with cops, a helicopter, and believe it or not, her demanding a special forces airlift, because she couldn't break into my house with her so-called master key. Linda was the kind of HOA president you get when the only other option is an empty chair. She strutted around in her perfectly pressed pantsuits, always behind the wheel of her pearl-white SUV, patrolling our quiet little cul-de-sac like she was head of some suburban secret service. She'd taken over after sweet old Mr. Alton retired, the guy who used to care more about the annual flower show and making sure the Christmas lights weren't too much of an eyesore. But when Linda got that gavel suddenly, the HOA newsletter wasn't about potlucks or whose kid won the spelling bee. It was a list of new rules and petty violations. Gnomes banned. Wind chimes banned. Front doors had to be one of 3 shades of beige, none of them flattering. You could almost see her getting high on the rush of telling grown adults they were breaking some sacred neighborhood code because a rose petal hit the sidewalk. Now, I'm a retired systems engineer, 40 years of making sure the right people got into the right places and the wrong ones didn't. So when Linda called a meeting about her next big idea, I should have seen the red flags waving. She wanted to install a master key system for every house in the neighborhood, said it was for emergency access and inspections as needed. I swear you could have heard a pin drop. Tom Parker, the mild-mannered accountant down the street, asked, "You mean a key that can open everyone's front door?" She smiled like a cat who just got the canary and said, "Precisely. For efficiency." I could feel my blood pressure spiking. I asked her as politely as possible to cite the exact law or bylaw giving the HOA this kind of authority. She deflected with some line about community betterment. I pointed out it sounded illegal, not to mention every locksmith worth their salt would walk away from something like this without explicit owner consent. Linda's smile twitched. She snapped that the board approved it, though judging by the looks on their faces, I doubt anyone voted from conviction. But that was it. The motion passed, and I knew I'd just drawn a line in the sand. That night, I sat down with a hot cup of coffee and dove into every relevant state law I could find. No surprise, there wasn't a single clause backing her up. In fact, it was pretty clear she was playing with fire. I sent a registered letter to the board quoting statutes stating I'd never provide a key, nor would I allow them to tamper with my locks. And then I upgraded my security, better deadbolts, hidden cameras, the works. Now, my son Jake is a 911 dispatcher. He thought I was maybe overreacting, but he knows I'm methodical for a reason. He told me to keep everything documented and, above all, to stay cool. Because people like Linda, when their little fiefdom gets threatened, they get unpredictable. Linda didn't take my refusal well. Suddenly, I was public enemy number 1. Every week brought some new violation notice: grass too high, mailbox crooked, driveway unsightly. She even had the nerve to drive by slow, just staring. Some neighbors quietly supported me, Mrs. Gable, who left anonymous notes of solidarity in my mailbox, and a couple of others who whispered encouragement, but most kept their heads down. Fear, I guess, is contagious. I tried reasoning with the other board members, Arthur, who jumped at his own shadow, and Brenda, Linda's ever-faithful echo. No dice. The wall of denial was solid. So I kept documenting, stacking up letters, photos, videos. My cameras even caught Linda one morning crouched by my mailbox with a tape measure looking like she was defusing a bomb. It would have been funny if it wasn't so nuts. The master key push wasn't dying. Word spread Linda found an out-of-town locksmith willing to play ball, probably a cousin or something. She sent notices for voluntary inspections followed by threats of fines if you didn't comply. I ignored every one. My stance just made her angrier. That's when little things started happening. Scratch on my car, missing newspaper, just enough to rattle me, but never enough to prove anything. I logged it all and talked to a lawyer friend who basically said, if she steps one toe over your threshold, you'll have her nailed to the wall. The showdown finally hit on a sunny Tuesday. I was in my office when I heard someone fumbling at my front door. Peeking out, there's Linda decked out in a blinding yellow pantsuit, dangling a key with a giant tag. She's working the lock like she's picking Fort Knox, but my deadbolt isn't going anywhere. You could see her confidence evaporate. She yanked out her phone, dialed 911, and started pacing, waving her arms, her voice getting shriller by the minute. She didn't know my son Jake was the dispatcher on the other end. I could almost hear him. "Ma'am, can you repeat that? Your master key doesn't work on a private residence." He played it by the book, asking all the right questions. No way she was getting instant SWAT. But Linda committed to the bit, ramped it up. "He's unhinged. I fear for my safety. I need an airlift." Special forces. I nearly spit out my coffee. An airlift, for crying out loud. Meanwhile, the chopper noise grows, patrol cars start arriving, fire trucks rumble in, and an ambulance parks down the street. All for little old me, standing in my robe with a mug in hand. I step outside, calm as you please, and there's Linda pointing at me, practically foaming at the mouth. The Sergeant Miller takes one look at me, one look at her, and you can see him putting it together. He asks if I mind a quick check. Of course not. Jake's name comes up, and Miller just sighs, realizing the so-called barricaded man is the dispatcher's dad. After a sweep, nothing is wrong. I hand Miller the camera footage, which he watches in stony silence, Linda fumbling with the lock, then spinning her wild story on the phone. He doesn't say much at first, just tells one of his officers to read Linda her rights. You could hear the handcuffs click from a mile away. For misuse of emergency services and a false police report. That moment, let me tell you, was cathartic. It wasn't just about me, it was for every neighbor who'd tiptoed around her nonsense for years. As Linda was driven away, neighbors peeked out, some outright cheering. Mrs. Gable did a little dance on her driveway. It turned out Linda's master key fiasco was just the tip of the iceberg. With her gone, people started talking financial mismanagement contracts to friends, even more petty harassment stories. The investigation widened. Brenda and Arthur cracked under pressure, and soon Linda was facing not just criminal charges for the false report, but for embezzlement and fraud. In court, her lawyer tried everything, but the video paper trail and her hysterical 911 call sunk her. 5 years in state prison, ordered to repay the HOA and the city for the emergency response. The judge was clear this was a massive betrayal of trust. The neighborhood turned a corner. New board rules repealed flowers and wind chimes came back. People stopped living in fear. Even Jake, my son, got a commendation for handling the wildest dispatch of his career. He still jokes about the airlift Karen. But the truth is, the story's more than a punchline. It's a reminder that when you let bullies run the show, things get ugly fast. Stand your ground, document everything, and eventually truth has a way of breaking through. So, craziest HOA story you've ever heard? Hit the comments. I want to know if anyone can top the day. Our neighborhood almost called in special forces over a stubborn deadbolt. And if you stuck around for this entire ride, thanks for listening.